Today is just me and Pasta Man. We're gonna talk about Attack on Titan. You guys don't know, but recently, not recently. This was forever ago. Me and Pasta watched the entirety of Attack on Titan together, and I got him into this show. He would not even know about this show if it weren't for me. I mean, he heard
And then
about
I
it, but
became annoying about it.
yeah, and then he based his entire personality on this fucking show, and I created a monster.
I
Uh,
got too silly.
but that's why I showed you it. Was because I figured you'd like it. And so we're gonna do a couple videos over this series. Particularly, we're gonna probably take it. We're probably gonna do it like the way they released it. So like season 1, season 2, season 3, part 1, season 3, part 2, season 4, part 1, part 2, and then probably a video on the last two specials that they
Season
did.
4, Part 3, Part 2. Can't wait for that.
Can't wait for season 4, part 3, part 2, and Knuckles in 3D.
Featuring
Attack on
Dante
Titan.
from the metal. Oh.
Attack on Titan came to an end, and it's a very complex show that I have a lot to say about. And I tried to put these things into a 4.5 hour video, and I finished the 4.5 hour video, and then I realized I didn't like the video. So I'm gonna start over from scratch with this little knucklehead right here. And this video is just about the first season. You know, everybody knows the first season's been talked about so much at this point that it's kind of tired.
Yeah,
So
but I think it's
Go
for
ahead.
good reason. This series became the first season of this show, especially. I feel like was the anime that popularized anime for a lot of people.
Yeah, kinda. I think we should probably talk about the cultural impact and the popularity of this series first because, well, I mean, it's a pretty. It was when it first came out. I mean, the popularity it's seeing now, it has only just now reached that level that it started at.
Yeah,
Because when it first burst onto the scene, it was insane. Like it had everybody at a chokehold.
I see so many people IRL with like the survey corpse like memorabilia. It's crazy how popular this show is in the West. I don't know if it has like the same level of explosiveness in Japan where there are lots of other popular anime, but here for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was kind of to the point where it was fucking annoying back in 2013 when I was a little teenage boy, because like people were kind of like, admittedly, people were being a little over dramatic about it, like a little bit, where they were saying like this is fucking revolutionary, this is saving anime, and it's so funny because I'm like pretty sure JoJo came out like 6 months prior.
Kind of a guy's first anime kind of take. But it
I
is
mean,
good. It is
yeah.
good.
Well,
Ironically, I think this is actually, I think it's like maybe the worst season out of the bunch, but that's only because the rest are really good.
I mean that's how you view it, but to be honest, as someone who watched it at the time, I didn't even like it at the time. I fucking absolutely uh, did not like this season. But for some reason, I mean, I did see the potential, I think. So that's all that I really got out of it at the time was just potential. And having gone back over it now, I absolutely dread having to sit through season 1. And sometimes even find myself wanting to just watch, if I'm going to rewatch it, just watch the 3 movies that they did summarizing season 1. But we'll get into my issues with it in a minute. Just the point is that it was very hard to avoid spoilers because people would not stop talking about it. They wouldn't shut up about this show. It was fucking everywhere. And I don't know, I feel like on the one hand I do feel like at the time it was very, very overhyped. But on the other, I think it was just something different. Like, it was a very unique take on psychological thriller. And I mean, apocalyptic stories have been done before, but this was like a new take on it. Like no one's done it quite like this.
If there's one thing you can give this series credit for, it is uniqueness and novelty. Like, I struggle to think of a show that I can really, like, compare this to, because it's just so original.
Yeah.
Like, how do you compare this to, like, what, like, Spider-Man meets The Walking Dead? Like,
I almost kind of envy you, because, like, for me, it feels fucking weird to like look at it, because I mean, I watched it when it first came out. I've watched this show grow up with me, and our entire culture has changed between the time that this started and now. Like, a lot happens in 10 years, and so whenever I look back at season 1, for some reason it feels, for me at least, disconnected from everything else in the show, which is, you know, weird, because, like, if you look at it from an outsider's perspective, like for you, it just kind of feels like a natural progression into a different show. But for me, it's like season 1 just feels like an entirely different entity. If that makes sense.
That's true. I can see what you're saying.
And
anyway, so what was the thing you wanted to start out with after the popularity?
Well, I mean, I was going to talk about the issue, or well, I guess we can talk about Isayama.
Yeah.
How much do you know about Isayama?
I know that he wrote Attack on Titan.
Well, that's kind of all he's done.
Probably like, Japanese.
Yep, crazy, fucking crazy, dude. He hasn't done many other stories besides Attack on Titan. This one's kind of his baby. Like, he did like a one-shot called The Killing Pawn, but other than that, like,
it's really the one-hit wonder.
He fucking did an Avengers thing, like a crossover with Marvel Comics called Attack on Avengers. That's kind of swag.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at his Wikipedia right now. It really is like just Attack on Titan, which is impressive. Like, when you think about it.
I mean, it's huge, and it's a story that he cherished. There is like a lot of Attack on Titan media, from like an alternate universe. It's like they're in high school, which was really funny, and then like an entire Chibi series, and just all this other shit. It takes me back to like 2013 and just the anime climate of that. I don't know. I mean, Isayama, there's not much to say about him quite yet. The only thing really that I could say about him is he likes World War II aesthetics.
Wow, gee, you think?
It's almost like an autistic hyperfixation for him, because he's very fascinated by World War II. And some of that, even in this earliest season 1, it worms its way into this with the salutes and the you know, the army, the military, and everything like that. He really likes military.
Well, it is very clearly like it is clearly kind of Germany inspired.
Yeah, I mean, all the characters are German names for some reason, like Armin and Aaron and whatnot. But yeah, Isayama, he did Attack on Titan, and he likes World War II, and that plays a big part in this series. So I guess we could kind of just talk about episode 1, kind of establish the premise of this shit show. This fucking garbage mid-fiction.
We're trashing on it already so much. I swear we don't mean to. Okay, I can explain the premise of the series.
Okay,
so I think one of the strengths of the series, another one, is it's a very strong first episode. Like, it hits you hard and fast.
Even that's another thing that I'll say is, like, even during the time when I was fucking trashing on it, and I was like, Attack on Titan is so fucking, which is so funny too, that at the time I was like, Attack on Titan is so fucking overrated. This show sucks. Only idiots like this show. And then like 5 years later, I'm like, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm a fan. I'm a fan now.
I get it now.
I understand. Even at that time, I was still able to acknowledge that it was like a really solid first episode. It was a very gripping
He
opener.
said, "Hold up, let him cook."
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so here's how the show. So basically, humanity has been forced into this small area behind walls, these huge walls, because titans exist, and they're basically giant zombies that eat humans. And so they've been forced to, for the last 100 years, confine themselves within the walls. And there's three layers of those walls. And so the conflict starts when one of
What
the
are those
walls gets
layers called,
broken
by the way?
open.
What are those
They're
layers called,
called,
by the
oh,
way?
Wall Mario, Wall Rose, and Wall Cena. I think I
And
remember this correctly.
those names are very important, but you don't understand that until
Yeah, but
literally
don't worry about it.
season
Don't worry
4.
about it. And so the Titans break open a hole in the wall, and they come pouring in, and lots of people get eaten. And
Including
it is
the
a very
so
and his mom, the main protagonist's mom.
main protagonist is a boy named Aaron Yeager. And when the series starts off, he has like a dream. It almost feels like a premonition where he just sees a bunch of crazy shit, which itself
A vision, if you will.
is an important thing for this series that gets a little
Well,
convoluted. But
that's crazy.
he has a bit of a premonition about all this crazy shit, and it's like all this flashing imagery. And I gotta say, like, the visual style, Wit Studio really knocked this one out of the park, and they continue to do so for the first 3 seasons. That's part of what made this so popular, was that it was the animation was gas. It was absolute gas.
Yeah, they really put their whole Watusi into this.
Don't ever say that again. Don't ever speak these fucking words again. But anyway, like it also, like it became like an iconic image of just that colossal titan, like the biggest titan they've ever seen, staring over the wall, and like Aaron like looking up at him. Yeah. That became like one of the biggest fucking images, like most iconic things ever, and it works. It's just so effective.
Yeah. And it has style, too.
Yeah. And this first episode is very straightforward. It's very simple. Where it starts with, like, a bit of a cliffhanger where it's like, and that on that day, mankind realized that they were fucking fucked. And that this... and then it goes back. It, like, starts with that, and then it goes back with... like, you meet Aaron, and you meet Mikasa, who is, like, kind of his not blood, like, adopted sister, I think.
Yeah.
And that's a whole thing I'm gonna get into later. But, and his best friend, Armin. And the three of them, it starts off as just kind of a normal sort of slice of life. It looks like they live in some sort of medieval town, gathering firewood, living in, like, normal houses, and there's like it's kind of charming because there's like an alcoholic soldier who's like a dick to Aaron. He's blonde. forgot his name. Basically like it's just world building and kind of establishing Aaron's home life for like 15 or so minutes of the episode, where he's fighting with the drunk soldier guy. And his mom's picking on him a little bit, and she's like, "You made Mikasa do all the work today, Aaron. You're a little..." She's typical mom. And she's got the anime mom haircut where her hair goes over her shoulder, which is never a good sign. And then basically, there's not much else to say about it until the big event happens, in which a fucking titan shows its head over the wall, kicks the door open, and that big titan's the colossal titan, and then a smaller titan, but still like a titan, runs in.
Then it breaks the other wall.
Yeah, and that's the armored titan, and yeah.
And they become important later.
very, very, like, one thing I noticed is, like, with this scene is, like, adrenaline, pure adrenaline.
Yeah,
Like, when that
it's
motherfucker is, like, running towards the wall, and it's just, like, hit the stomping and how fast he's moving, and everybody's like, fuck, 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 and, like, try to, you know, get the cannons ready, trying to close the gate, and he just breaks it.
yeah,
Goes from
and yeah,
0 to 100 in, like, a matter of minutes.
that's what makes it such a great first episode is how it hits that like 0 to 100, like you were saying, how everything just goes so horribly wrong in the most glorious fashion.
Um, and then Aaron, he's running through the town, and he's like trying to get back to his house because the bolt, like one of the rocks, went right towards his house, and he finds that his dad disappeared, and his mom has been crushed by her house, like her legs got crushed by the house, and a Titan is approaching, and so Aaron is trying to get her out from under the house, but she's saying, no, leave me. And then the drunk guy comes to save the day, and he takes one look at that thing, and then he's like, you know what? I'm good.
I'm
and he
good.
just he grabs the
He
kids
grabs
and
the
fucking
kid
runs.
and runs.
And so
Yeah.
this is kind of like Erin's backstory moment where she gets picked up by the Titan, and then the Titan goes to eat his mom, and it's a big dramatic. Plays that that iconic song with the woman singing. I don't remember what the song's called, but yeah, basically like watches his mother get eaten by a Titan, and that is the catalyst that sets Eren on his journey.
And that's his Joker moment.
And yeah, so that's kind of the premise of Attack on Titan, and you know, there's a lot of interesting things that sort of feed into the overarching narrative, but when you're looking at it blindly, when you're blind, simple. It's a very just simple, straightforward episode. That's like this is the character, this is the main character's motivation. This is the like a lot of world building, you know.
Yeah, I think that's one of the that's one of really the strengths of this series is that it kind of starts out appearing very like a very simple and elegant premise, and he just builds on that world building continuously, like one little reveal after another, until you realize that the world is actually way more complicated, but it still makes sense. And that's one of the things I really like about this series.
Well, it's also like, and it's what I also really like about it is it being a mystery thriller with kind of an element of trying to find out the truth, and then you find out the truth, and then there's all this shit that gets progressively added as it makes its over the course of its almost 100 episodes. Is that when you finished it, like when you've finally gotten to the end, and then you go back to the beginning. It's so much more interesting. There's so much I want to say about it, but are we doing like a spoiler thing, or
I think we shouldn't spoil anything that isn't in the first season, but I know what you mean. I think that's one of the coolest things about the first season.
That's kind of the angle I'm wanting to take with this first episode, is that there's so many things I have to say about Eren, and also about that colossal and armored Titan, because everything builds off of this event. This event is the catalyst for everything afterwards, and everything moving forward all builds off of this.
Yeah, I think one of the flaws sometimes that series that rely a lot on these like big plot twists and reveals is they become a little less entertaining on the rewatch. But Attack on Titan is like the exact opposite. Like, so much of the first season is like recontextualized by the later seasons, which makes it really interesting to rewatch. Like, there's so much dramatic irony going on.
So much dramatic irony, and also, you know, it's another thing about how like a lot of people, like the discourse that surrounded this show at the time was terrible. You know, people had so many complaints about so many characters. But it was because we did not have the full context of those characters yet, including the main character, who I still stand by the opinion that I don't like Eren. I think he's a weak character. I think he could have been better. But I also think that some of the criticisms that were thrown at him when this first came out where it's like we just wait and see. Like it kind of brings into question whether or not you
Yeah.
should review something before it's finished or done with.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Aaron, when he starts out, is not a super interesting main character. He's very one dimensional. His goal is he wants to kill all the Titans. He wants to get rid of them all. And his main strength is that he works really hard. And
And he must become stronger. And this is all shit you've seen in other anime. You've
I've got
seen
to
this
attack
before.
on the Titans.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's like um a more childish version of like just your average shonen protagonist. More specifically, at times he reminds me of Kirito, but at other times he reminds me of like Ichigo, but like without any of the coolness.
Yeah. And that's another thing that kind of gets recontextualized later in the season when you know what's going to become of him. He's a lot more entertaining as a main character, but in
Well,
the
that's the thing.
moment, he's just not that
That's the thing
interesting.
too. Is like when I jumped onto this, I'd watched plenty of shonen. Like I'd watched Naruto and Dragon Ball and Bleach and One Piece and all these other shonen, and I was getting a little bit tired of the tropes. And Aaron just did not feel like he added anything to it. Long term, though, he does, and it's because Isayama duped everybody. He tricked everybody
Oh,
somehow. Um,
it's all a trick.
so
But it's hard to really talk about that without talking about the later season spoiling. But I know you
yeah,
did want to talk about the opening.
the
I
opening,
gotta
yeah.
say, that opening is such a goddamn banger. Dude.
I will be honest, bit of a hot take here. I have heard it so many times that it does nothing for me now. It just does.
Sad.
It does.
I've heard it
The
a
first
lot of
opening.
times too.
The second opening, I actually like more than the first opening. I even at the time, that was my opinion, was like the first opening, good as it is and iconic as it is. Like I said, I had heard it so many times that like. And it wasn't even
Yeah.
intentional. It was because it was popping up fucking everywhere. Everybody was
It
talking
was
about how
every-
freaking epic this theme was. And people were complaining about the second opening and saying it's not as good, which is weird because they're kind of, at least like how they're made and like the tune, and they're kind of similar.
Yeah.
It just seems like they just made two banger songs and said like use these.
I don't know.
But yeah,
Anyway,
like,
it slaps. I feel like that was half the popularity too. Was the opening was so catchy.
Dan, the one about how Danny had sex with the bees and the eagles. Yeah, that was a banger lyric.
Uh, it was fire.
Um,
Anyway,
so I mean, like, not much else I can say about the first episode without, like, I feel like I'll go back to the first episode when we get later on in these reviews, like season 2, 3, 4.
yeah,
So, but there's other than that, like there's a little bit of symbolism in the first episode, like that, like it's a very effective. Like when the Titans come in, the music is obviously chilling, but there's also a lot of interesting things. A guy who's like walking through town as everybody's running away from the Titans. He's like walking through town reading scriptures out loud, as if to like speak to God in the middle of all this hell. Like interesting stuff like that.
yeah,
It is a horror show, I think. Like it does horror very uniquely, and there's a lot of like chilling ideas like that. There's a lot of like another thing is like there's a lot of black crows all throughout the scene. Death, obviously. So
yeah.
that's one thing I
I think it
appreciate,
does.
and it gets they get better at that over the course of the whole show.
Yeah, that tone like keeps going, and yeah, it's really good. We could talk a bit about the next episode after this big incident is Aaron and Armin and Mikasa. They've grown up a little bit, and they want to join the Survey Corps.
Well, yeah. yeah, I guess we could talk about that next. I think like we could probably just talk about Eren, Mikasa, and Armin since they are like a big part of this show.
Yeah, we can
They're
actually
essentially-
talk about their dynamic.
So we've already kind of established our opinion on Eren, at least early on. For this first season, Eren is not interesting. He's like probably the least interesting part of his own show. And it was so funny because I like anytime I try to think of anything I could say about like the most the most interesting thing regarding Eren is a bit later into this season he dies. he and Armin and Mikasa go out on a Titan hunt, one of their first missions, and what I love is like the pacing's kind of slow towards the start, where it's mostly dedicated to Eren and Armin and Mikasa's training into getting into the Survey Corps, and you've got the drill sergeant, and you've got like very, I don't know, like it's kind of stilted at first because it's like after this time skip you're like, what the fuck happened? Like they flash to a couple images of like one where his dad's like holding him with a syringe, and then it brushes over that and it just doesn't even address it. And they do explain it later, but like they completely brush over that.
Later.
So at the time, like I didn't even remember that. Like I completely didn't even warrant that with a comment.
Wow.
It left like, and so after that, they have this big build up into their first mission where it's like they're training, and Eren seems to be having trouble. Like his little belt thing it just can't get the what are they called?
He just keeps falling over.
Well, what's
so
the
he
thing
can't
that
use
what's the thing that they use, like, the way-
omnidirectional gear.
Yeah. So these people, the Survey Corps are like a group of military. They're a military group that they fight against these Titans, and in order to fight against these Titans, they have this really interesting thing called omnidirectional gear, where they basically hook shot around and do flips and tricks and shit. It's a very convoluted way to fight them because these Titans. One thing they know about them is that their weakness is the back of the neck, the nape.
Mm-hmm.
And if they slash that, they kill the Titan. Very simple premise, kind of a video game premise almost.
Yeah,
in fact,
and that's
there are
their
video
one
games.
weakness.
And anything else, they'll regenerate. They don't actually get anything out of eating people, but they just have that urge to eat people. And, you know, so that's the one way they can fight back, is that nape of the neck.
And the ODM, the ODM is definitely another big reason for the popularity of this show. It's just so cool to watch them.
Honestly,
and
it's an
especially
excuse for
with the animation.
It's an excuse for the animators to flex their muscles, really.
Yeah, they need to do all that, but they did.
And so, but Eren seems to be. See, he can't seem to get it down. He struggles to keep in the air. He always like flips over and smacks himself in the head. And I should take note that when we watched this, when me and Pasta watched this, when he did that, when he smashed his head on the ground, in one of the later scenes, he's sitting in the lunchroom, and somebody notices that he's got steam coming out of his forehead. And I pointed that out, and Pasta Man's like, "Thanks, Gabe. What you missed in Attack on Titan." And did this whole fucking spiel, and then it turned out that actually was important. And an important little subtle detail that played a bigger part into the show. So thank you very much, sir.
It was fun. I apologize. I wasn't really familiar with your game.
Yeah, I wasn't previously familiar with your game. But,
yeah. And then this is also... Oh,
go ahead.
This is also this episode with Eren trying to figure out how to not suck. This is also where all of the other characters are introduced. To, like... And they're introduced in mass. It's definitely like
it does the typical shonen method of like, this is Reiner, this is Bertolt, this is Annie, this is like all these other characters, and that's one thing. Like
this
a lot
is
of these types of stories.
This is Armin. This is Erwin.
That's what a lot of these stories need, is that they need to implement kind of like a dynamic, and I think they do a good job with that. A lot of like slice of life elements. Yeah. Kind of thrown in there.
Yeah, kind of the obvious ones, like the John being the kind of competitor, kind of rival to Eren.
Yeah, Kind of got like a Sanji Zoro thing going on there. And then
Mm-hmm.
you got like
And
Reiner. He's like the himbo. You know, he's like the nice, big, strong guy. Um,
will not become important later.
Definitely not
Definitely
gonna
not.
be an integral character to this story at all. Just you got Connie. He's like a dork. And you got Sasha, she's like a dork, and they make like a funny duo. They're almost like
I think
siblings.
Sasha's like one of the fan favorite characters, I think, because she's just a goofball.
We'll talk more in depth about
Just
them
a silly
still,
little
but
goof.
yeah, like Sasha, she's the funny potato girl. She likes potatoes, and she's so silly, and she's so
Yeah.
goofy, and she also plays a big role later, further down the road. Um, so that's one thing about this that I do like is that there are no pointless characters in this story that I can think of. I can't think of a single character that didn't add something to the narrative, like you often get in shonen. Um, except Eren,
Yeah.
and obviously I can't go into his purpose in his own story.
Yeah. We're not gonna talk. I don't even know.
But
Yeah. But I definitely will say it is a lot of characters introduced over a very short period of time, which makes it hard to like really fall in love with them at first. But as the series goes on, a lot of them get more development. You start to realize which characters, like the stuff they have going on, and they become more interesting.
and also none of them have plot armor, so that's
Yeah.
one thing. That's one of the staples of this show is that it will kill off anybody. It doesn't care. It will kill off.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how it. And there'll be characters that they get killed off and you don't care, and then after you slowly start to care later, after you
Yeah.
realize. But like we'll get into that in a second. But basically like. What, for this beginning part, like it's probably easy that for a lot of people to kind of get like bored, because it's like you had that exciting first episode, and now we're focusing until clear through to episode 5. We're focusing on all this like training and Eren and Mikasa arguing about like you got to survive, Eren. We got to do this, and you know she's like real strong-willed, and Eren's still being kind of a little bitch about his mom dying, like wah wah, my mom's dead, cry about it. But you know, nothing that seemed like it's all standard stuff that the story needs, but none of it's like really grabs you until their first mission. And I love that all of that was in service of building up this first mission to show how meaningful, like how like it's basically to get you like, yeah, like I'm ready. Like he worked hard to get here. He's finally here. It's his first mission, and then it immediately goes wrong. It immediately goes wrong. Like characters are already getting eaten, already like losing limbs and shit. Eren gets one of his legs bitten off and like rolls across a roof.
That was definitely one of the big shockers for me, because in most typical shonen, you'd expect this to be like a really like kind of triumphant, kind of like hype moment, but instead they're just getting cooked.
They are getting well. That's because I feel like I see that more in like seinen, where it's like because Berserk did that, where it's like, oh, we got our first big mission against a giant fucking gargoyle thing, and it's like fucking everyone up, is breaking his limbs and shit. Like, and Eren, like he gets so like torn up, and then like Armin he's gonna get eaten, and then Eren quickly somehow in like the span of 2 seconds gets up off of that roof, shoots over to that one, and then pulls Armin out of the mouth, out of the Titan's mouth, throws him onto the nearby roof, and then he's like holding it's the coolest fucking image ever, where he's like holding the Titan's mouth open, and then he tries to reach out so Armin can grab him and pull him out of the mouth, but then the Titan clamps its jaw down and eats Eren, and that shocked everybody at the time because our main character doesn't have plot armor. He just got eaten. No plot armor for our main character. And honestly, I feel like it would be nice if they just kept him dead, but I get that would make the series completely different.
It's actually really funny to think about, because based on what we know, about how Titans work. It's so funny how this story would have been completely different if Eren actually died
Yeah,
and the Titans successfully ate him.
I do wonder like where it would have gone from there, but who knows?
But
Either way, um,
yeah,
like
it's a
for
it's an arc that really like hammers home that like the odds are stacked against our heroes for sure.
well, the part I found interesting is that for a couple episodes there, the viewer is made to think that Eren is dead. Um, and they touch on how this affects Armin, and they also touch on how this affects Mikasa. And in the case of Armin, it's a very fascinating thing because it goes into how Armin was bullied a lot when he was a kid, and how Eren protected him all the time. That's how they met, was that Eren protected him from some bullies, and he's like, they always pick on you because you don't fight back, right? And then Armin's like, well, it's better than running away. And they become best friends. And they have this whole story about how Armin used to tell him about how there's a sea out there, a sea and ocean and deserts and Icelands and all this shit out there. And we just gotta find it. We just gotta get outside the walls and find it. And if we become Survey Corps, we can do that. And then, like Armin has kind of an interesting backstory and an interesting connection with Eren there that becomes even more interesting again over the course of the show.
Yeah.
We also learn about Mikasa's. What? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of give a rundown on Armin and Mikasa's dynamic with Eren. So Armin's kind of a bit of a brains over brawn character.
Because he gives good brain.
Bruh. The funny thing about Eren and Mikasa is that Mikasa is like way tougher and scarier than Eren is in the first few seasons. So Eren always gets into fights with the bullies, but the only person the bullies are actually afraid of is Mikasa when she comes running after him. Which is a little bit subversive, you gotta give him credit for that.
Well, I've got some issues with Mikasa's character. This is what the bullies see when Mikasa enters the picture.
Yeah.
But for now, like, we learn about Mikasa's backstory, and basically we learn that she has BPD, and Eren is her favorite person, and she puts him on like a pedestal, and she will do she is madly in love with him because when she was a kid, she almost got sex trafficked, and he, at like the age of I think 6, goes in and kills her traffickers.
Like, he stabs them with a knife, and they die. And he's like 6 years old.
It's the most unhinged backstory ever. And to be honest with you, and I still stand by this opinion, it just feels like, like Linkin Park crawling in my skin, like backstory type shit.
It does kind of feel like that.
It's a little corny. Like, he gave her this scarf, and now she'll never take it off because he gave her this scarf. I don't ship them. I don't find that relationship interesting. It's also, they're like adopted siblings, so
yeah. And I could see you. So Mikasa, like, that's kind of the frustrating thing about her character is that she revolves around Eren so much.
Like, she's supposed to be
she doesn't have a lot of herself going on,
a strong, endearing woman, and that's something that this show struggles with a lot. Is it struggles with, trying to be a little bit more progressive, and that's what this show has gotten under so much hot fire for. Again, we'll get into that later, but Mikasa is like she's supposed to be a strong woman who's it's supposed to kind of flip the dynamic where she's the strong one and Eren's kind of the weaker one, but she still revolves around him. Like, all of her character is built on him and how important he is to her.
I've heard that she's a little better in the manga, and for some reason a lot of her better moments got cut by Wit Studio. But I don't know if that's true.
I haven't read the manga, so I will not claim to speak on behalf of the manga, but all I can really say is that what we got with the anime, Mikasa is not, even when she like improves, she is not a great character. And I mean, you know,
They're not super strong for like the female lead of the series.
there are good like there's good women in this series, but Mikasa is not one of
But she
them.
ain't one of them. Okay, well, actually, I think the one character that really shines for me in this arc, when Aaron's dying and stuff, especially like with the later seasons context, is John or Jean, or however you pronounce that
Yeah,
stupid name.
so he basically learns that Eren gets eaten, and he like has to take charge. And actually, there was a very interesting scene that happened during this whole part where these people at headquarters, it's getting raided by Titans,
Oh,
and they're cowering in fear. And this one guy's got a grin on his face. He's working on a gun, and this woman's like, why are you building that? Like, it's not gonna do shit against these Titans. And he's like, yep. He puts it in his mouth and fucking kills himself.
That was the funniest moment. He's so like happy with himself when he finishes loading the gun.
He's like, finally. And she's like, why are you? And he fucking just... He's like, yeah, I'm out of here. You guys are on your own.
He was so real for that. Anyway, I'll explain what John's deal is. So, John is part of the training corps with Eren, but he's not trying to join the survey corps. What he wants to do is join the military police and live an easy life inside the walls, never having to deal with any Titans. And that's the whole reason that he works hard, is just so he doesn't have to do that. But then he kind of gets forced into action with this incident, and he kind of gets put into a position where he has to be a leader for the other characters. And that's something I really like about Jean, is that his whole character is defined by this tension between doing what's good for him, what's convenient for him, and doing what's right. And that's something like he consistently has in season 4 as well, and it's really charming and admirable, I think.
I mean, yeah, like they build on it. Even when things change, that doesn't change. Like that stays kind of a consistent thing, which I find very, very interesting. One thing about John that I thought was like super fascinating was like one big theme in this series is the legacy that people leave behind. I mean, that's something that we kind of get a taste of when Eren gets eaten, and then we get to focus on how he affected Mikasa and Armin. But they do that again with a close friend of John's, Marco, where, you know, he dies. And we don't get to know much about him before he dies. We barely get to see him. He gets, like, no screen time. And then, next thing we know, there's this big mission. And by the way, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but, you know,
we do.
But John finds out that Marco died. Like half his face got eaten, and it's a very gross scene.
And we don't see how it happens.
It's a very, very gross scene because he goes, he sees like that these Titans are kind of like cats, and they cough up human balls.
Yeah, because they can't actually digest people.
Yeah, they just puke them out into these gross fucking... It's like, ugh. You know, so a lot of, like, Titan focus early on. But he finds that his best friend just died, and that, I think, it kind of contributes greatly to his call to action moving forward, like why he feels the need to be a part of this now. Because and after that, like you get to see like how Marco affected him when he was alive. You get a lot of these flashbacks, and they kind of build on Marco's character after he's dead, which I hadn't at the time seen a lot of shows do. I was 13 though. Granted, you know, peak fiction when at that age was like Elfen Lied, so I don't know what you want from me. But I was gonna take that somewhere else, or like there's a very, very interesting scene where John is like hiding out in a house because there's like a Titan approaching, and he's fucked. He's out of gas. He doesn't have any more blades.
You don't got that gas.
And he's completely screwed. But he looks over, and there's like a dead soldier, like laying down with their gear on,
With the gas.
and it's got gas, it's got blades, and so he like kind of makes use of this dead soldier's gear, which I think is kind of emblematic of what this entire thing has been about, where the memory of that soldier, like, even though that soldier is dead, his memory still lives on, and John takes it and uses it for the sake of his own survival, to kind of keep going, basically. And like, kind of passing the torch, essentially, is like, that's a big theme, and
That's fire.
It goes into passing the torch as both a good thing and a bad thing, because there's a lot of like generational trauma that kind of comes into play throughout this series, especially in season 3. But this one has kind of faint focuses on it, where Aaron is like repeatedly cursing his dad for not telling him shit. Like, right as his dad said he was going to finally show him what was in the basement, because his dad was always working in the basement, he fucking disappears. And now Aaron is like left with this fucking mess to kind of clean up for much of season 1.
Yeah. I guess a good point to get through from here is like the reveal that Aaron, he's not dead. He is a Titan. What?
Yeah. So after learning about Mikasa's honestly not so great backstory, that I do get the intention of it, because I also need to clarify before people get upset that I don't like her backstory. I think it's kind of corny. One of the things that made me mad about the backstory was this part where she, and I get it too, like Aaron tells her to, and this is going to build into kind of what you brought up, but Aaron like tells her to, like, the guy picks Aaron up, I think by the throat, and Aaron's like, fight or you'll die, like, fight, you have no choice.
Atakai.
The kind of main thing of, like, if you want to gain anything, you have to fight. And so she picks up a knife. And this part's kind of interesting, too, because the big, tall, adult man's holding the child up, and she's behind him with a knife, and she's got to attack him from the back, which correlates with the Titans, how you have to hit them in the back of the neck.
Whoa.
But she starts thinking to herself, like, I get it now. And she remembers a time when her dad brought home a dead goose, and how there's a bug that eats another bug, and it's the circle of life. And it's like, you almost got trafficked. This is very out of pocket symbolism correlation here. Like that, and I found that just a little bit offensive. Anyway, as much as I don't like that backstory, it kind of plays into how that is something that Aaron taught her was fight, survive, keep fighting until until the day you die. Don't die, basically. And
groundbreaking.
And so she's like ready to die. She's like, I lived a good life, but this Titan's approaching her, and it goes down, and for some reason she cuts its hand. She can't. And it's on impulse purely, but it's something that Aaron taught her. So she realizes she actually doesn't want to die, even though Aaron is gone. And then another Titan's like approaching, and she's like still clinging on to life, even though she's out of gas and she's basically fucked. And it turns out this other Titan actually isn't running towards her. It's running towards the Titan in front of her, and it punches it. And it's like baffling. You're like, what the hell? And Mikasa says a very funny line that, like, when I rewatched it with Beck, we both burst out laughing, because Beck got spoiled for what happens later on, where she says it felt like an amalgamation of humanity's rage all in one. And,
it's an awfully specific thing to pick up.
Very odd. But yeah, it's Aaron. Yeah. It's the Titan was Aaron. And honestly, I was a little bit confused, because they kind of like go into what happened after he got eaten, where he wakes up and he sees other corpses inside stomach of this Titan, and then he cries, and then he turns into a Titan and rips his way out of the out of the Titan's back, and then starts kicking other Titans and punching them and throwing them and doing all this shit, and it's super hype. And I thought that meant that if you survive getting eaten by a Titan, you become a Titan, but that was not actually what that
No.
happened there. Actually, that
Although it's actually an extremely funny scene in retrospect, because that means that in retrospect, literally thousands of people die because one man could not chew his food. But I won't. But we won't talk about it.
Well, it was also a really funny scene because it shows all this. It's this dramatic music, and Aaron's really getting into it. He's killing these Titans. He's getting hype, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill you." And then he wakes up from his trance and realizes that a bunch of soldiers are all pointing guns at him because they found out he's a Titan.
I have to say, when you were showing this series, I kinda already knew, like, via pop culture osmosis, I kinda knew that was gonna happen. But I'm sure, like, for somebody watching this series for the first time, they would have been like pooping themselves.
My mom was, yeah. She fucking got hype. She was like, "Oh wow, Aaron! Wow, look at him! Look at that boy go!" that leads to like a whole dramatic spiel where, like I said, but there's a lot of side characters because for that whole one, these guys are all going to execute Aaron, and this takes me to kind of one of my major issues with it, and that is the pacing, because the pacing to this show sucks for the first season at least. It is not great. And this scene is very, very emblematic of that because basically, like, this guy wants to kill Aaron because Aaron's a Titan, and he's like, "Are you a double agent for the Titans? Are you in support of the Titans? What are you doing?" And Armin, like, the way they do it is, like, Armin's having some insecurity problems, and he's like, "I hate myself so much. I am so useless and worthless." And then Aaron's like, "We need your help." And then Armin's like, "I can't believe that I thought I was useless and worthless. Now I am stupid because he's like this endless monologue, just this nothing burger dialogue.
No sex,
Just this nothing burger dialogue that stretches the episode out, and they do this all over the season. All over the season. There's like a whole episode where Aaron is supposed to go on this mission to seal up the wall. He's supposed to put a giant boulder in place of the wall. And because the Colossal Titan appeared again, and it made another hole, and then it disappeared again. And so now the Titans are flooding in, and Aaron has to go seal up the wall with a boulder, and he falls. Yeah. He hits his head, he falls over, and he's out for a whole episode. There are a couple of things that I wanted to talk about with Pasta Man that I didn't really bring up while we were recording the video that I am now elaborating on here as the editor. And one of them is this particular scene that I just mentioned. Because in this moment, Aaron turns into a Titan with the intention of using this boulder to plug up the hole in the wall, but ends up punching Mikasa instead. And at the time, you're led to believe that this was just him not having control over the Titan form and giving into that Titan desire to kill, but if that's the case, why didn't he eat her? Prior to this exchange, I think he gets mildly annoyed at her, and so when he turns into a Titan, his intentions completely shift. What started as a desire to prove her wrong, that he is helpless and constantly needs her to step in and save him, instead turns into a desire to kill her. We established later that the Titan form works only when you have a certain goal, and so I think his goals got a little bit confused, and I think it also gives weight to many of his actions in Season 4, displaying that he has a violent side to him that is only subtly touched on in the earlier seasons.
I was gonna mention one of the characters that I really like. Pixis,
Pixis?
So...
He's
the guy who realizes, hold up, this guy could be useful to us. Maybe we shouldn't immediately murder him.
Yeah, the guy's like about to, even though Armin just talked their way out of it, the guy that was gonna kill him, he starts saluting like, I need you to shoot the cannon, and then fucking Doc grabs his arm, he's like, hold up, let him cook. And Doc Pixis, I love him. He's great. All throughout the show, he's just
like one of the
charming.
first things he says is like, damn, I wish I could get eaten by a female Titan. He was kind of real for that.
Yeah, he was cooking. But as he, so he starts this whole operation where he's like, so yeah, Eren, I need you to, after a trial, which we'll talk about in a minute, he is like, okay, I've got custody of Eren, and I'm going to have Eren do this big mission. Can you take this boulder, and can you please put it in place of that wall? And Eren goes to do it, and then he hits his head, and he falls over, and he fucking is out for a whole episode. And I hate that episode.
There's so much pointless commentary that happens during that stretch.
I fucking hate that episode so goddamn much, because there's, Armin tries to help him where he stabs a hole into the nape of his neck, and then he starts talking to Eren. He's like, Eren, wake up! And it's like Eren's dreaming about his family, and Armin's banging on the window. He's like, Armin, what are you talking about? And it like, this doesn't add anything to the show.
Well, there is one thing I like about that scene in particular, if I were to defend it, which is that, so at first Armin's like, don't you want to kill the Titans, bro? Don't you want to kill them all? And Eren doesn't like react to that. But then Armin says, Eren, don't you want to see the sea? Don't you want to go outside the walls? Don't you want to be free? And that's what, like, finally, like, wakes up Eren and
then
gets
the
him
whole
going.
House gets lit on fire, and it's like the fire invigorating him. And I'll say, gets like, that is interesting, only from the angle of, like, and they make it clear from the get-go that Eren was bored as shit until Armin told him about the sea, and he had realized that he was not free. They were living in a giant, and so that's why he compares them to cattle in the opening narration. It's like, we are cattle. Yeah. And so that's something that I think is very interesting about Eren's character, that you kind of realize early on, is that he isn't actually concerned about his mother so much as he's more concerned about his lack of freedom and how he feels like the world is being taken away from him.
I think that definitely becomes more clear with, like, the retrospect of the later seasons too. But yeah, that is important.
So, we're kind of jumping all over the place. There's a few other things we need to talk about. We definitely need to talk about... Go ahead.
I do think this also gets at another theme of the series. So Armin says this at one point: those who aren't willing to sacrifice anything can't win, they can't make progress. And that's like the big theme of the show, is that if you want to beat the Titans, you have to take big risks, you have to make big plays, and you have to get a lot of people killed.
There's a character that embodies that, and his name is Erwin Smith, and his buddy Levi Ackerman, who were inspired by Ozymandias and Rorschach from Watchmen, respectively. So, Levi and Erwin. So, Erwin is my favorite character. However, there is not much to say about him in this season, except for when basically the main villain of the season comes into play. That's kind of when he gets his moment to shine. But Levi gets more development, like, kind of early on, because of his introductory scene, which he has an introductory scene, and I think if I recall, I don't remember, he might have showed up as mentioned beforehand, but the first scene I remember was while we're talking about all of the living on in the memory of others and the legacy that you leave behind when you die, and how you can't achieve anything if you don't fight. Levi consoles a soldier that is dying after killing a Titan. And he tells the soldier that his life meant something, that he will keep him in his memory, but the guy dies before he finishes his speech, and he starts to wonder if maybe he heard all of it, or if maybe he, but Petra, I think, was it Petra that was with him, or just some woman, was
I think it
like,
was just a woman.
yeah, she's like, he heard all of it, I think. And so, I
Yeah.
think the significance of that scene is that, as much as Levi is a very serious, very, I don't want to say cold, but it's more like
He's got like a very, cool guy, badass like vibe to him.
well, I also notice he's very good at handling deaths of people he cares about. But it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
he doesn't care. It doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. He's just very good at
Yeah.
not letting it keep him from
Yeah.
his goal.
I think
Um,
that's something I didn't really give him credit for at first, but then when I watched again, it's exactly what you were getting at, that kind of theme of carrying on the memory of others.
and he's a very determined man. Like, he's a very
Yeah.
self-assured, confident. He kind of brings some relief to some of the more tense moments, like when shit's hitting the fan, when things are going wrong, and Levi shows up. You're like, okay, it's not all bad. Like, we still
He's
got our
loaded
boy
with the
Levi.
sauce.
Um,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
that's the thing about him, that he's up there. Like, he's not my favorite. Erwin's my favorite character, but Levi is probably second, because he is just awesome, and he gets so much better as the show goes on.
Yeah.
Um,
He's definitely one of the fan favorites, specifically because of how like cool he is.
this
He's a
this
cool guy.
this takes me to another thing about this show. At least early on, I think they kind of level it out a little bit as it goes on, but early on, definitely this show has the Death Note effect. And considering I heard it was directed by the guy who did Death Note, that makes a lot of fucking sense, because it has that I take a potato chip and I eat it energy a lot of the time, where for no fucking reason at all, something very calm, standard, and simple is blown out of proportion, and it's the most overdramatic shit just ever. Like, it's super loud and super. And what I'm referring to, of course, would be the trial scene where I think it's after the mission, where the council's deciding what
Yeah.
should we do with Aaron, and they have him on trial, and they're like, we need to figure out who's going to get custody of him, because this side wants to kill him, and
Yeah.
this side wants to use him for the benefit of humanity. And
Yeah.
Levi wins the case by kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah, so he just basically the point of it was to demonstrate that the Survey Corps can control Aaron, and they do that, and he does that by kicking his face in.
It became a meme. Mostly people thirsting for Levi. Not that I blame
Yeah,
them,
some people were kind of
but
freaks about that scene, like,
I mean, like, it also kind of brings to my attention that like, people at the time were like shipping Levi and Aaron, which is not a good ship at all.
yeah.
The first 3 seasons because Aaron's a minor, and then the last season because Aaron's Aaron. If you want like a good gay ship, I think Levi Erwin is a much better one. But
Thank you for
um,
your insight on this very
well,
important
I didn't ask
subject.
you to speak, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Levi, he's a go-getter. He gets the job done, and he's a very hardened, self-assured man. And for a little bit, he gets to take care of Aaron, and it slows back down a little bit. And you get to meet
Yeah,
Levi, and you get to meet his crew, which is Petra, this one guy who's trying to be Levi. He thinks he's him.
bro
Um,
thinks he's him.
and some third fucker. I don't even remember the name.
So I think that I do like they don't get a lot of time to develop, but there is like one scene that I kind of really like. So they're trying to kind of figure out how Aaron's powers work,
And
and
they can't get
so
him to
at
do it
one
on
point,
command. They can't get him
yeah,
to
but
do
then
it.
at one point, Aaron kind of activates it on accident, and like all of them get like super tense. Like they're like, "Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? I'm gonna
Yeah,
kill you!"
yeah. So he has like an injured hand, and it's not healing. Like he bit the fuck out of his hand. It's just not working, and his hand is fucked up, and it's not like I said. It's not healing. It's just choosing not to. And then he
Yeah, probably should mention real quick. That's the trigger for turning into a Titan. Is they have to be hurt or like kind of injured in some way.
yeah, which isn't it? That's a real quick side tangent. Don't let me forget what I was talking about. Um, why was that like a big thing like why was self harm like a big thing in like shonen anime?
Because
Because
the average
like
anime fan.
well because like shut up. Like in Naruto, they have to like bite their thumb and then they have to put their blood on a seal on the ground and that will like summon like a giant frog or summon like a giant master or something. And I think I recall there's also self harm in My Hero Academia, where Midoriya like
Oh yeah, he has
is
to
like
mess
intentionally
himself
like
up.
flicking like breaking his fingers in order to send a shockwave towards his enemy. Like, why is that such a common thing in shonen? I'm just kind of wondering. Uh,
IDK fan.
you think it has to do with how many like angsty kids like anime, or
I mean, yeah.
maybe
But
it's
anyway,
I mean I think in this particular instance, and this is actually something I feel is worth saying, in Attack on Titan at least, I can't speak for those other shows. I think it's about what you were saying about sacrifice, how you have to sacrifice
yeah.
something in order to fight. And they kind of learn that it's not just the pain that works, you need a goal. um, and he figures that out by grabbing a spoon, and then it forms a giant Titan hand, and it's holding the spoon at the end. And Hanji, who is this non-binary character that doesn't play a
Oh,
super huge role in this season, but can still get it. Well, I think I don't know if they're a girl in the anime, but I know they're non-binary in the manga. They have no binary,
they have no binding.
which they're a little
Yeah.
androgynous.
So
It's
Hanji's thing will just she's a little freak. She's a little
oh yeah,
weirdo.
they got a Titan fetish.
So she's kind of obsessed with studying Titans, and that's her thing. But she actually becomes a lot more complex later on. But
You gonna keep misgendering Hanji?
oh, sorry, hey girl, I mean they.
Well, I think it's just a manga only thing, but Hanji has an autistic fixation on Titans. There's like an episode where Hanji tells Eren about the Titans and talks to Eren all fucking night until the morning, where he's exhausted and trying to stay awake. Like Hanji could go on and on. They know everything about Titans, and they have these two Titans that they kind of view as pets that they've studied thoroughly to see how they act, to study their behavior and whatnot. And well, I
Yeah,
mean, where do we want to
we
take
like
this now?
we like them. We like. Well, I guess kind of going back to what I was saying. So at first, Levi's squad like they don't trust Aaron, and when that incident with Aaron transforming to pick up the spoon happens, they think he's about to like attack them. Like that's their immediate assumption is that he's a threat. And sort of when things get cleared up, and this is kind of a scene I really like, is their form of apology to Aaron is they all like take their hands and they bite them
And it's a way for them to
like the
kind of
same.
It's a way for them to kind of understand him, like try to
Yeah.
see where he's coming from, and then they're all like, "Holy fuck, how do you do this?" Like, damn,
Yeah.
it is hard to
It
bite
is.
yourself.
I think that was kind of a sympathetic moment I liked. There aren't a lot of like really like wholesome moments in this series, but that was one of them for me.
Which is later given a much more sinister meaning when you see those same bite marks on their hands after they've been killed by Titans. Which I think fully emphasizes the tragedy of this situation to begin with. the reason we hate Titans and the reason that we're fighting against them in the first place. It always ends up coming back to that same reminder again and again. One of the people in Levi's squad, Petra, she looks like Nobara from Jujutsu Kaisen. And that, I will leave it at that, but that's even funnier to me now, given something I learned about in Jujutsu Kaisen.
That's, yeah. We're not gonna... We don't need to talk about it.
The parallels are strong. But she's a very lovable character. Of Levi's squad, I think she's the only interesting one, because you got the other one, he's like an asshole. He's trying so hard to be Levi, and then they do the joke like twice where he's on a horse, and he's talking big shit, and he's talking himself up. He's just like Dracula flow, like, I'm him. And then he bites his tongue. And he fucking... Yeah. They do that joke twice, and it was funny the first time. What's that quote from the game from Far Cry? One time's funny, two times he's fucking funny. Annoying.
Yeah, and besides them, honestly, those other two guys in Levi's squad, I can't remember their names, and I cannot name like a single personality trait from them. I'm not gonna lie to you.
The blonde guy, like, I don't remember shit about him. And that's one issue, is like, I think his character writing, at least early on, was a little weak. It felt like this character has this personality trait, and that's it. But Petra, I mean, she had more to her, somewhat. She was just mostly just a cute girl. That was kind of it. And pretty much they're only set up for one purpose, which is to die.
Yeah.
And
if we could, that gets to one of the arcs that I really would love to talk about, which is the female Titan introduction.
I'll be real and say, like, the second half of this season is where I really start to just zone out, because for me, I kind of love that segment of like the kind of where you kind of get to see how much of a strategist Erwin is. So they go into like... It's good for that, like, I'll say, like, and they even have like a whole philosophical discussion. Basically, like, you learn Erwin's methods, where he has a certain layout for this crew. He's got everybody like, and he gave every different section of this crew, as they're departing, different information, so that he could personally pick out who is like, because he thinks basically, okay, I need to kind of set this up real quick. Those two Titans that I was talking about that Hanji studies got killed, and so Erwin, seeing that they got killed, asks Eren a question where he's like, who do you think, like, do you think the Titans are like, I don't remember the exact question, but it was like, do you think the Titans are really the enemy, or do you think maybe there's somebody in our...
Who do you think is the enemy, is I think what he says.
And then Eren, it became a meme, and everybody missed the point where he was like, what? And he's like, I'm sorry, that was a weird question to ask. But what he's asking essentially, or insinuating, is that because those Titans got killed, that somebody among us is a suspicious imposter. And so that's what the purpose of this plan was for him to try to weed out who the imposter is. Yeah. And he gives all these different crews different information. What?
So yeah, it's kind of really clever. So he gives all the teams or the units in his group, he gives them different intel on where Eren is in the formation, and then when the enemy approaches, he can kind of intuit which group has the rat.
Yeah, kind of narrow it down. Yeah. And then from there, once they finally get the female Titan comes in, and her introduction, holy shit. Like, I'll say, like, it was actually pretty cool. Because, I think, the first time you see her, she's got one of the... Yeah, she's got one of the scouts, and she's got his little hookshot thing, and she's, like, spinning him around, and Jesus Christ, when I saw that, like, I was like, I would hurl. I would fucking beyond hurl. That seems like such a terrifying cons, especially since they
That
zoom in
would-
and show how much this is fucking up
and
his
she
body.
does it like so casually. What a horrifying thing.
Well, it's also like scary when you consider like this is a human being and she's content with fucking doing this to a human being and not just killing him.
She
And she throws him
She was being neurodivergent, okay?
and a minor. Basically, she finds Aaron eventually, and then she chases him down. And then this leads to the next part of Erwin's plan, where he sends a bunch of soldiers to hold her off a little bit, like to distract her. And this was kind of the part where it started to bug me because, like the pacing is just so fucking irritating. Like,
Yeah, I will admit that. They spend a
this
long
whole-
time just
this
talking,
whole-
like, what's Erwin doing? What is he
This
thinking?
whole stretch, it's so much of it is dedicated to them running away from her in the forest, and it's not interesting animation. They loop it almost like it's just a loop of them running away on horseback from this woman, and then some titans come in and she kills them, and then they keep running, and Aaron's like, I gotta do something, and then Levi's, no you don't, and then they do it again and again and again, and then they have like a flashback that touches on the whole thing that we talked about earlier, where they bite their hands, and we get a bigger understanding of Aaron and Petra and all them. But I feel like it would have been better to have this flashback when it happened instead of throwing it here, because now it's like you're insinuating that for 20 minutes they've been running away from these things while Aaron, in great detail, remembers the thing that happened between him and Petra and all of them.
Yeah,
And then,
I feel like there's a lot of like scenes that are flashbacks that could have just, happened chronologically instead of being flashbacks.
And it would have been much more subtle, because then they could have just left it up to the viewer to put two and two together there, which they seem to like doing in later seasons. But anyway,
it's like that
another
thing that shonen authors do when they're about to like kill someone, and they're like, "Oh crap! I gotta give this guy like a backstory. I gotta make the audience care about him."
And and that's also what's funny that you say that, because they fucking die in the next episode. But what I also don't like about this scene is like it's Aaron's inner turmoil of deciding, should I transform and fight her? And then Levi's like, do what you want. And then Aaron's gonna do it, and then Petra's like, Aaron, no, remember, and then it does the backstory, and so he's not gonna do it. And so then they, eventually, finally, after I felt like 3 or 4 episodes of this shit, not like straight, but like it felt like it took some years off my life. And then finally she gets hit with the trap that I think Pixis and Erwin set up, and you're like, okay, all right, so that's what this was all building into.
Let him cook.
And then she screams, and all the nearby titans come to her and eat her. And then she uses her gear to, like, escape. And so Erwin's basically just threw away all those lives for nothing. And then we get this little debate scene that, honestly, on paper would not bother me. But considering how much time we just wasted, it feels like we're wasting even more time having Armin and all the rest of the characters, one by one, talk about how they feel about what Erwin just did. All those people that he just sent to die and get killed.
Just all this, everyone's just, and even before that, they spend like so long like speculating on what Erwin's up to, and it's like, get to the point, bro.
It's, let the viewers write the analysis. Do not fucking tell me why Erwin's deep. I know why he's deep. I know why he's the GOAT. Alright? I don't need you to explain his character in depth to me. So that was a little bit frustrating. But then, as she runs away, she hones in on Aaron, and then Petra and the other two, fucking don't even remember their names because they're not even important, fight her, and she turns into a titan, and you think for a moment, oh, this could be really, really good. Like maybe they've got this, they know how titans work, they're professionals. And then what I think I really love, though, is like the strategy, kind of almost, that she uses against them, where they've deduced how long it takes for her to regenerate. So I think they What did they
Yeah. They
cut
they
open her
think
eyes?
that based previously, they think it'll take like some amount of time for both of her eyes to heal, but then she focuses on just healing one eye, and then she's able to see faster and surprise them.
Yeah, by focusing all of her regeneration on just one eye. Uh, it's I mean the way we're explaining it probably won't make sense to viewers who are just watching this and who haven't seen
It's
it.
cooler when you
It's
watch it, okay?
it's hard. You need the context, and that's actually what I like about the fights in Attack on Titan. Is like heavy focus on strategy. You need context. You need like every detail present to understand. Kind of, it's like a game of chess basically against these Titans. But in one fell swoop, she's able to regain her vision and quickly kill all three of them. And then this leads to another thing that I found frustrating. I think I know we said we weren't going to talk about the other seasons, but I got to kind of get it out of my system here.
Okay.
Our Aaron gets mad and just invalidates everything he just said. Where he's like, "I'm never trusting in my friends again. I'm gonna," and he goes on a rampage. He turns into a Titan. The two of them fight. It's a pretty cool fight. And then he gets his ass beat. And then she fucking eats him. And then Mikasa comes along, and she's like, "Aaron!" And she's running after him, and then Levi stops her. And he's like, "No, we can't do that right now." Very endearing scene. I get why it needs to be here. Kind of emphasizes Mikasa's attachment and her
I think I
irrationality
know where
when
you're
it comes.
going.
It emphasizes Mikasa's irrationality when it comes to Eren. How she throws all logic out the window in favor of emotion. I don't know if you could tell I'm really passionate about season 1 for some reason. And Levi, how he's more level-headed, and he's like, "I understand the issue, but we can't just go get him right away. Like, you can't just dive on in without a strategy. Like, you need to think for a minute." Which it's interesting, too, that these two characters have this interaction because they're both Ackermans. And they're not directly related, but they're from the same clan, which is kind of like Attack on Titan's answer to the Uchiha clan, basically. But they're both Ackermans, and he's like, no, we gotta have a strategy before we just jump in to go save him, or else you'll get fucking killed. You'll be just like him. And so it's a very interesting scene, raises the tension, and it leads to when they do, from there, immediately go capture Eren. But my issue is that this happens again in Season 2.
Yeah.
The exact same scenario.
Again.
And then again in Season 3, the exact same scenario.
There are 3 instances in this series, 3 separate arcs of Eren getting kidnapped.
Well, not just Eren getting kidnapped, but this exact same conversation 3 times in a row, where Levi has, like, Mikasa's running in, and Levi's like, "No, stop, we need a plan!" And that kind of speaks to, I think, some of the repetitive writing choices that happen in this show. This show is, at times, a little bit repetitive.
Isayama.
Thank you, Isayama. You're my goat. I love you. But
there's one more thing from this arc that I do want to give credit to, though. So, like at one point you were talking earlier about the Eren's like decision: do I turn into a Titan? Do I put faith in my comrades? And so what Levi tells him is, "I never know the outcome." So basically, his point is that it's pretty much impossible to know what the right answer is. You just need to pick something and commit to it. And I think that's kind of a common theme of Attack on Titan, is that they're kind of always at an information disadvantage. It's never clear like what the right decision is, but you gotta go for it.
That's also interesting that Levi says that to Eren, considering things that happen later, and we don't
talk about it.
We're not gonna give away too much, but I'll bring that up with it. That's a funny line now that I think back on it, given those characters. But anyway, so yeah, and this takes us kind of to the last stretch. So I mean, we've kind of touched pretty much on all the major plot points. We didn't really talk much about Annie, and surprise, surprise, she's the the female Titan, which is kind of obvious. Like I already saw that coming. Granted, I watched this after the season was over, so I already knew. But I feel like when I showed this to my mom, who had no reference for the culture surrounding this, she saw the blonde hair on the female Titan and immediately knew. She's like, wait, what's the name of that girl with the blonde hair? And I was like, God damn it. God damn, it's that obvious.
What? No.
And
no,
from there, actually, this also ruins other twists later when you focus on the design of the Colossal and Armored Titan and how obvious that kind of...
Don't worry about it.
But again, we're not going to give it away for the sake of people who may not know, but come on. It's not a shocker.
I think if we can... the thing about Annie is that there really is not much to say about her in this season, because despite her being the main villain of this arc and her being done away with after this arc, we do not know what her deal is for 3 seasons.
Actually, I'll be real. Even with, because I think I'm not going to spoil, obviously, but even with season 4 and season the other seasons that elaborate later on her, they don't add much to her character. And to be honest with you, I think she's the weakest. She's actually I pick on Eren, but she is the worst character in this story. She really is.
Or at least kind of the weakest antagonist.
Well, just the weakest character in general, because even when she becomes relevant again, there's barely anything to her character. It's almost like the story forgets about her for most of the series.
I see you saying her is the worst character, but hear me out. This guy.
Let him cook, alright? He's a goofball. I love him.
Damn.
I like him and Sasha are funny, alright? I think you're...
But anyway...
You're just a
so
hater.
the last...
Is it because
he's bald? The last climactic arc...
Is it because he's bald?
It's because he reminds me of Esam.
Fair enough. I think he kind of looks like Eminem. That's
a banger.
Okay, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I guess we could talk about the final arc, which
I
is
can't
the
really
rematch.
think of anything that we didn't touch on. So we can pretty much just jump into we get introduced to 2 more characters who I like, kind of a little bit. In the first season, they're not that interesting. They don't leave much of an impression. I know one of them is named Hitch, and I think the other one's Marlowe.
Yes, that's true. They become more important later.
These 2 goofy little fucks. They stay pretty consistent throughout the show, and they actually become pretty good characters by season 3. Hitch especially so. From that point forward, is a really good character. But at the start, they start off kind of irritating, and you got this whole thing where Marlowe, they are close to Annie. They're in the same regiment as her, and there's this whole thing. This part's kind of interesting, at least from the angle of Marlowe is a very ambitious man, and he has this dream of gaining power. He wants to. He thinks that the government is really flawed, and he would like to gain power so he can change it. But he slowly learns that. Not that one, that's hard to do, and that 2, people suck. He learns that there's soldiers who are selling weapons that the citizens pay for, and he learns a little bit about the corruption. He almost considers killing them, and Annie steps in, and she's like, I mean, I'm not going to stop you. And so it's this interesting little moral dilemma that he has. You want to?
Yeah, I think he's one of the characters gets elaborated more on later, but he's kind of a bleeding heart, kind of I'm gonna fix the system. I'm I'm gonna fix all the corruption and the bad stuff. And then she's kind of the more nihilistic kind of counterpart to him. Like, ha, you're lame and a loser and lol.
Well, not completely. I mean, because when he like considers for a moment that he wants to kill these corrupt soldiers, she's like, I mean, I'm not gonna stop you. I'm not like, if you want to kill them, that's your choice. Almost from like a sympathetic angle. So it's not even like she completely thinks he's stupid or naive, but she, I feel like in some ways, with kind of context from later on, I do kind of feel like she sees a little bit of herself in him. At least in the sense of like signing up to make a change in the world only to realize that it's all meaningless and corrupt. Because, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, Annie's not a super interesting character. She's just
I guess I think I'll just mention how this ends. So Annie gets away, but they've kind of figured out that she's the female Titan, and so they kind of stage an ambush for her.
Yeah.
Except they do this in like the center of the whole like humanities in whole like in Walsina, which is like the furthest place from where the Titans usually are.
Yeah, and that leads to a thing that we'll talk about in season 2.
Yeah.
Involving actually Hitch and Marlowe, hilariously. They play a big part in that in season 2, but that's literally at the beginning of season 2. We'll talk about that in the next one we do. But essentially, yeah, they have Armin draw Annie out, and they have him have a conversation with her a little bit about. He says like this part that I thought was kind of funny, where he's like, "I need you to help me. They're gonna kill Aaron. Everything's going to shit. I need your help." And then she's like, I mean, why would I help? Like, why do you need my help? I don't think I'm a good person. And then Armin goes on this whole spiel about how, well, there's really no such thing as a good or bad person. It's more about if you're good to me or bad to me. And if you don't help me, I guess you are, in my eyes, a bad person.
Anyway, you want to walk into this underground bunker that nothing's down there, nothing suspicious?
We totally won't jump you.
I swear
okay,
we
bro.
won't jump
It's okay,
you.
bro. Come down here. We totally won't jump you. Yeah, I mean, but I think his little rant there kind of establishes the gray morality of this world pretty well, and how, and they get better at this later on, but about how like characters do terrible things, but you begin to understand why they make those decisions. And Annie, I don't think, is a great example of this, because a lot of the time it's when you actually learn her motivations, you're very underwhelmed. But you get a glimpse of them here, a small little glimpse. You see like one little sliver of a backstory where she was harshly trained by a mentor, and again, we won't talk about that till way
sad.
later. She felt sad one time. But she basically picks up on, this is a trap. And if I go down there, you guys are going to trap me and I'm going to be fucked. So she also admits that she's thankful that she could be a good person to Armin, but she has like a little sharp thing on her ring, and all these people come out to jump her and tackle her. And then she cuts her thumb and transforms into the female Titan.
That was a cool moment. That kind of that cool surprise moment.
Yeah, it was a cool.
It's also a good example of how like Annie knows what she's doing, unlike Eren. Like she knows how to get the most out of her Titan abilities.
Yeah, she's equipped with the knowledge. There's so much I want to say about her, but I can't. I'm holding back because we don't get that yet. We don't get that until way later.
Instead, let's talk about how this arc ends.
Yeah, so this final... Okay, one of the episodes, after that insane shit just happens, and then, I think initially Aaron, we go through the same bullshit again of Aaron having trouble, turning into a Titan. I don't even remember how he turns into a Titan after that, and I don't really care because I'm just gonna skip to the part that I really like. Because this video's really starting to drag. This is longer than the monster video almost. But basically, after that insane beginning to the fight, and Eren and Annie start fighting each other, the next episode starts with just a church scene. It's just the wall guy. There's this guy who his religion is the walls. He views the walls as God, and he's having a sermon, and it's super chill, and then just fucking they like pummel through the building. and it goes from like so that funny. Slow, like, because a lot of this season felt really slow. It started to slow down again, and now it's high octane again. It's like it's how it felt at the start of the season, and it's like Eren versus Annie is like one of the best fights. For now, good. The fight's getting so much better as we go along, but this is like the best part of season 1. It's the craziest part of season 1 for sure, and it's just them like through the city, which by the way I don't think has been fully evacuated, so people are getting killed.
Yeah, there are civilian casualties.
They're throwing each other around, Eren like smashing each other into roofs, destroying infrastructures, and just fucking each other up. Eventually, towards the end, well, is there anything you want to talk about this whole final fight, really?
I think the way it concludes is a real, like, bra moment. So, basically, Eren's, like, beaten her. He's pulled her out of the nape, and, like, they're ready to capture her. And she seals herself off in the Titan hardening crystal stuff. And that's it. That she's trapped herself in there. They can't get to her. And now she's just in a block of rock.
And she's just put aside for the remainder of the series.
She does not come back for 3 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, that just pretty much brings it into conclusion of, like, Annie was not a great choice for villain, or at least she's not written with as much depth as many of the other villains in this show. And I don't know, she almost feels like a monster of the week, to be honest with you.
She does. That is exactly
that's why I'm struggling to think of things to say about this final battle, because as cathartic and as intense as it is, there's not much that it brings to the narrative other than just a crazy fight. I mean, I did like the part where she was like climbing up the wall, trying to make it to freedom, and then they cut her down, to kind of correlate with the fact that she and the others took their freedom. But
that's a bummer.
I don't know, man. Like it's not a very thematically interesting fight, but it is a very cathartic fight. It's a very fun fight to watch, and we don't even elaborate it on it until next season. And that's the funny thing too about this that really bothered me, was that this did not get a season 2 for 5 fucking years.
Wait, really?
Yeah, when I watched this, I was like, I didn't like it very much. I thought it was just uninteresting. I thought parts of it were really cool, and I especially did like that final battle. That final battle kind of hooked me, and I was like, okay, maybe it'll be better from this point forward when I don't have spoilers. Because at the time, that's what I thought it was. I thought, like, I just didn't like it because I knew everything that happened. I've come to find, actually, I don't like it because it is too many episodes for too little content. And it's all just getting stretched out over the course of 25 episodes, when really, this could have been, like, 16 episodes. Yeah, for like 5 years, it just sat there, and it did not get another season. No announcements, nothing, until 2017, when season 2 finally dropped.
That's crazy.
And I had to wait. I almost considered picking up the manga, but I never did. However, I don't know. I think what we've got now is really, really good, and I'm glad that it's finally over after 10 fucking years. But I mean, overall, what's your What's your overall review opinion of season one
Okay,
of Attack on
it's
Titan?
I definitely agree. I do think it's kind of the worst season of the bunch, but it is a great hook. It does hook you in. It gets you interested. It really tests your patience.
A
But
little
you know
too
what?
much.
The rest of the seasons deliver. And like I said, this season is actually like really interesting watching it a second time when you have all of the context and you kind of know what's going on, you know what some of these characters are secretly thinking, and that was fun for me. I did like that.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, I discount season one a lot, and I usually just watch the trilogy of movies because I ain't got time for all that. Um, I don't like it very much compared to the rest of them. I think parts of it are valuable, but I do wish that the pacing was handled a little bit better. I do think it tests your patience way too much. Um, so I mean, we didn't even bring up the scene where like it's basically Erwin telling the scouts before they even go out on a mission, hey, some of you are gonna die, so whoever doesn't want to be a part of this, walk away. And then they walk
And
away for like
almost
two
all of
fucking
them.
minutes. 2 minutes of them walking away with this dramatic music playing, and it's like we don't need all that. So I mean, the pacing is what really brings it down for me. When it's good, it's pretty good, but like just the ridiculous pacing, and I think it's also I am biased in the sense that like the anime culture at the time was toxic as shit, and it was really, really infuriating. And people would spoil it, and then they would say it's your fault for not watching it. Um, so I mean, I don't know. I don't care for season one very much, but I don't hate it. I think it's a fine beginning.
The Attack on Titan fandom is dying. Retweet to kill them.
Well,
Okay, but consider the fact that this season introduced Erwin, the man, the myth, the goat, the legend.
okay, that was exhausting.